Hello everybody. So we are really pleased to have you here today with great panelists. So maybe just in a few words, I'm going to present you the panelists, and then we have the possibility to exchange around our main topics today related to media and information technologies, a double-edged word for women's advancement. So today we have with us Sheila Dallas-Katzman. She's president of the US chapter of the IAWRT and chair of NYC for CEDAW. We have Mona Eltawi, American-Egyptian journalist. She's a New York Times editor and human rights activist. We have Masih Alinejad. She's an Iranian journalist and writer, and she got the Geneva Summit for Human Rights and Democracy Women's Rights Award. We have with us also Matthew Caruana Galicia, ICIG member, data journalist and Pulitzer Winner Prize. We also have Courtney Rach, she's the advocacy director of CPJ, and Nadine Hoffman, the deputy director of IWMF. And I'm Sophie Busson, I'm in charge of advocacy at Reporters Without Borders. So the idea would be to have today a discussion regarding the difficulties to cover women's rights issues, the difficulties also for women journalists to do their job. And maybe just to start, I will give you some if you are interested, but I was thinking to present the new report of Reporters Without Borders entitled Women's Rights Forbidden Subjects. So this report focuses on the forms of harassment and exaction that journalists, both men and women, can encounter when they cover women's rights. And it's based on several months of research, and it shows that it is now still very dangerous for journalists, and especially women journalists, to cover women's rights issues, that this violence very often, unfortunately, happens in a total impunity. Cyber violence is the most common form of abuse we report in, and of course that women journalists are specifically targeted. We can see this phenomenon in many countries around the world. We saw that in more than 20 countries. Of course it's more, but in the report we report about 20 country situation where it's very difficult to talk about women's rights issues. And we can see that you have different predators, as we like to call them in RSF. You have radical group, religious group, mafia, authoritative regimes or web users and trolls that try to target and commit violence against women journalists. And of course the consequences are very important. We see some massive exile of women journalists in some countries, like we reported in Afghanistan the last 2 years from 2015 to 2017, 100 Afghan women journalists decided to quit their job. Some of them stopped working, and fortunately many women journalists also resist all over the world and decide to continue their work despite the threats. So today we have the chance to have with us several journalists, men and women, who could testify about the situation. And the first question we could ask is, why is it so difficult? Why is it sometimes dangerous to cover women-related issues? And what are the main threats for journalists working on such topic? And maybe I can ask Sheila Dallas-Katzman your point of view on this.
Thank you. Thank you. You gotta turn it on first, right? Hello everyone, I'm so happy to see so many people here, and familiar faces too. How many journalists are in the room though?
Yay!
Wow, very good. To answer your question about the female journalists and why is it that I want to say come under fire all the time, the threat. I think there are several factors. One, it's the patriarchal system in which they reside, in which they live. Two, it's the cultural norms and mores of that, that culture, region, or whatever it is. Where women's roles are defined, or restricted, defined, restricted, and women are not supposed to do certain things. In terms of the coverage of women's issues, you're not supposed to talk about women's issues. For instance, let me just be blunt and say, we can't even talk about menstruation, which is a normal, everyday part of life, because for women too, who grew up in this society, how dare you? You know, you can't report in this. Girls are going to schools, they're having their periods, they have no sanitary napkins, and you can be killed for reporting on these sorts of things, because then it brings shame to the family. And they don't want that to happen. I bet you never thought about that this could have happened. There in some cultures, what I find, the elderly, you can't really talk about the elderly. You can't photograph them, for instance, right? I know that in some Middle Eastern countries, you can't take pictures of old ladies, even if you see a situation where this should be reported, this should come to light. I see some people shaking their heads. You can't do that. And if you are a woman who would be more sensitive, and you want to do it because you can relate to it as a woman, then you come under fire. Because not only the men are coming after you, you know. Remember that the women who are so trained, who train the men to be the way they are too, are going to come after you in some regard. So this is where the danger lies. And how do we fix this? We have to fix these systems with policies. Put policies in place for change and a different structure that is going to make it a safe place for everyone.
And Mona?
I wanted to ask you, because I know you encounter many threats yourself, and maybe you could tell us a little bit how did you deal with it? What kind of threats and how did you deal with it?
Sure. Okay. So I need to turn this on. Hello, everyone.
Is this working? Yes. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you all for coming and thank the organizers for this really important panel. I don't think we have enough time for me to tell you about all the threats that I get, to be honest. It is really awful out there for women journalists. It's awful online in the so-called virtual world, and it's awful in the so-called real world. And for me, both of those worlds are very real, because I spend a lot of time on social media, specifically Twitter. And on Twitter, on any given day, I am called everything from an ugly lying whore, to an Islamic terror bitch, to a Zionist agent, to who paid you, Turkey or Qatar, all kinds of political accusations, depending on who I'm criticizing. So I'm attacked by Trump supporters, I'm attacked by Muslim men, I'm attacked by atheists, I'm attacked by, like I said, any group possible you can imagine. But in these attacks, while some who don't spend so much time online might shrug off as, well, it's just social media, it's just in this virtual world that doesn't really exist, they have real repercussions in the real world. And in the real world, when I write something, for example, about the Egyptian regime, I hope no one here gets offended because I say the word fuck a lot. And I say the word fuck a lot because I'm very angry, and I have a lot of reasons to be angry because of all of this that happens. The Egyptian regime is a fascist regime, and I call Donald Trump a fascist fuck. And the Egyptian regime is one of the best allies for Donald Trump. And I'm doing this as a kind of like a preamble to explaining the threats that I got just last year. So after Donald Trump was inaugurated last year, I'm a columnist for the New York Times. I'm not an editor. I'm a contributing opinion writer for the New York Times. So on the day of the inauguration, the New York Times asked columnists around the world to write about the inauguration from where they are. And I live between Cairo and New York City. So So I was in Egypt and I watched the inauguration with Egyptian friends, and I sent in my column from there, and I headlined my column, "The American Sisi," because Donald Trump reminds me very much of my dictator in Egypt, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, an ex-general who, when he was head of military intelligence, oversaw, as head of military intelligence, the sexual assault of women revolutionaries in the form of so-called virginity tests. So this was the headline to my piece. Within 3 weeks, my photograph was on the front page of an Egyptian newspaper, and it was a photograph not just of me from a coffee shop or a restaurant, but it was a photograph of back in 2011 when both my arms were broken by Egyptian riot police. So I was a protest, I was covering a protest near Tahrir Square in November of 2011, and Egyptian riot police were sent to get me. They knew who I was. They beat me, they broke my left arm, they broke my right hand, they sexually assaulted me, and I was threatened with gang rape. And I was detained for 6 hours by the Interior Ministry and 6 hours by military intelligence, during which I was blindfolded and interrogated. And I was denied medical care for 12 hours. So when they put the picture of me on the front page of an Egyptian newspaper, from the days when both my arms were in a cast, this is to send a message. We did this to you, and we can do this to you again. And not just that, and this is where it becomes not just the threats from the regime, which male journalists also experience, of course, but this is where for women it becomes sexual. And it becomes a form of sexual aggression and sexual violence. As I told you, I was sexually assaulted and threatened with gang rape. They called me a sex activist. Now, I write about sex and sexuality, and I proudly write about sex and sexuality. There is no shame for me when I write about sex and sexuality. But when a pro-regime newspaper in Egypt calls me a sex activist, this is code for slut. This is code for this woman is a whore. And this message was completed, just because I will tell you more as the panel progresses, last year, again, at the end of last year, in November, when there was an attack in Sinai on a mosque that killed more than 300 people. I wrote a column for the New York Times in which I criticized Egyptian regime policy in Sinai, and 2 days later, on Egyptian television, a very famous and well-known TV presenter called me a prostitute, said that a dog had more honor than I had, and broadcast an interview in which I talked about my book, which is so the title of my book is Headscarves and Hymens, and the subtitle is Why the Middle East Needs a Sexual Revolution. So this man called me a prostitute, said a dog had more honor than I did, and played a clip of an interview in which I explained what my book is about and what the sexual revolution is, by way of explaining how I'm a prostitute. So, the attacks are online, in which all the groups who don't like my work, because I fight misogyny, I fight patriarchy, I fight racism, I fight homophobia, I fight classism, because my feminism positions itself to dismantle patriarchy, whether it's religious, or racial, or class, or gendered, or any kinds. So all those groups who don't like women, who fight patriarchy, attack me online, and in the real world, the attacks have been on my body and on the bodies of many other women. I'm not the only journalist who's been sexually assaulted. As I said, at least 17 women revolutionaries in Egypt in 2011 were subjected to virginity tests, which are forms of sexual assault, and we hear regular reports from activists in Egypt about the sexual assault and the rape of women in Egyptian prisons. There are 60,000 political prisoners in Egypt today. So that's just to give you an idea of what a wonderful life it is for women out there.
Masi, I saw you were nodding when I was talking.
Yeah, I wanted to just say that, can you hear me? Is it on? Actually, I got expelled from Iranian parliament just because I was so loud. Is that good? No? So I don't need a microphone, I'm really loud.
I was just listening to my sister, and I wanted to say that I'm a little prostitute in Iran as well. So,
Prostitutes of the world unite.
but I have to admit that first when I was called a prostitute, I cried a lot. Let me tell you my background. I'm a journalist, but I grew up in a traditional village, in a small village. And when I was a parliamentary journalist, criticizing the government of Iran about, their salaries, their pay slips, instead of answering my question, they were just pointing out to me and saying that first cover your hair, that's big hair, it's impossible, and then ask your question. Because for women in Iran, hijab is compulsory, and if you don't cover your hair, then you won't be you won't be able to get a job, you won't be able to get an education, you won't be able to live in your own country. So if you don't cover your hair, you're a prostitute, according to the government of Iran. And there was a cleric running after me in the parliament and calling me a prostitute. First cover your hair, then ask your question. I remember that I was a single mom, hiding my son and because being a divorced woman in the Middle East, sometimes, they count you as a second-class citizen. You are already a second-class citizen if you're a woman. But if you're a divorced woman, it's really worse. So I have to hide, to be a mom in itself in secret, and not telling my colleagues, the MPs, the member of parliament, that I am a single mom. Then I was reading the news that saying that Masih has a relation with a man called Puyan. Why? Because my son's name was Puyan, and my blog, my email address, everything was under his name. And they were writing that on the newspaper. So I used to cry a lot. And when I became really powerful, because for me it's really important to show the other side, that how we deal with it and how we get in power, I started to write about it. Everything that they called me, I named myself that loud. So you calling me a prostitute? Yes. If defending human rights means a prostitute, I am a prostitute. They even were calling me ugly duckling. I said, yes, because you don't know the end of the story of ugly duckling. And when I left Iran, I started to, because if you're a journalist, they kick you out, or they ban you from being a journalist, or you have to do self-censorship. Although we have a lot of amazing journalists inside Iran who are still in prison or fighting back the government, but I prefer to leave Iran and be loud. So I came here and I launched a campaign called My Selfie Freedom, because I knew that when they want me to get out of the country, that means they want me to keep silent. So I said that it's only me, I cannot do anything. Let's get together. I started to film myself, and when I was sad, I started to cry and film myself and talk from my heart. And when I was happy, I started to dance and film myself. So I filmed myself every day, and I told all my audiences, the women, that what scares the government of Iran? Talking about yourself, about your emotion, about your body, about your feeling. They are scared of journalists? Let's all be journalists. Let's all together write about ourselves. Let's all together break the censorship. So I launched a campaign called My Selfie Freedom, which means women get together and talk about everything that you're told not to do, everything that you're doing in stealth, in secret. Like we are banned from singing solo. Let's singing together and film ourselves. We are banned from dancing. Let's dance together and film ourselves. We are banned to show our hair. So let's just, show our hair, take off our headscarf and film ourselves and publish it online. So I was nobody here, but now my campaign has got 1 million followers. I'm not alone. There are many of me. They hated me. They shamed me. They called me prostitute. They called me ugly duckling. But I found my window. They kicked me out from my country. They couldn't, take Iran out of me, my country out of me. So my mother used to tell me that every time when you were a child, somebody kicked you out from a room and locked the door, you were able to find a window and get yourself into the same room through a window. Now, social media is a window for me and many journalists who live in exile. I am there in Iran. In my small village, I was the one watching the clerics, the government of Iran, always listening to the decision makers who were talking about my body, my personality, my identity, my life, my fate. But now, they are watching me. They are listening to me. the clerics, the policy makers, and they all know me by my name. But of course they have different names. Prostitute, the MI6 agent, the agent of Zionist, ugly duckling, the agent of Donald Trump, although I'm the victim of a visa ban here. And I don't have anyone here except my son in the UK, and I cannot visit my son. But the government of Iran called me the agent of Trump. But I want to tell you that as far as they're going to name you and shame you and threat you, when you talk about it loud, the fear is going to go away. And when you ask women to not be ashamed, then the government of Iran, or those government who attack you, or those people who attack you, they are the one going to scared of the women. Now my campaign is not just only me, and there are millions of women in Iran. They're taking off their headscarf, the white headscarf, they put it on a stick and wave it in public. I'm sure that you heard of that. So this headscarf, which they forced us to wear it for 40 years, now just waving it can scare the government of Iran. This is the power of the women.
Thank you. I think you started to talk about what we wanted to talk also a little bit in the second part about what to do, and I think it's a really important.
I have a lot to say.
Yeah, I know. And maybe to say that right now we are talking about women journalists who are attacked because they want to cover women's rights issues, and it annoys many people. But sometimes some women journalists are just journalists covering many different topics, corruption, really political affairs, and they also received gender-based violence attacks. And I think this is very important to see that it's not just in the Middle East, in Africa, murdered last October in Malta. She was also under stress and is here to talk about this.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here. So while my mother didn't report exclusively on women's rights issues, she lived them through her reporting. She reported on issues that affected everyone: political corruption, abuse of power, ethics violations, kleptocracy, cronyism, this kind of gangster capitalism that unfortunately has taken over my country. My mother's assassination wasn't an aberration. It didn't just come out of the blue. She experienced a lot of the things that the people I'm sharing this panel with are testifying about. So I suppose, while I can say that the best weapon for a woman, for anyone really, against this kind of abuse is mockery, and to have a great sense of humor, and to show these people up and so on. It's a really powerful tool, but at the same time, when you're using it, you're almost signing your own death sentence, because if you're left alone doing this, then all a government has to do, in the case of Iran and in the case of my country, is kill you, is murder you. Then they've solved their problem. And what are you left with? I mean, you're dead. That ship has sailed. So I think we need to start fighting back in other ways. Mockery is fantastic, but surely there are other recourses that we can take. Perhaps we should start thinking about legal means, like suing our own governments for criminal harassment, hauling them before international courts. These are things that we have to start thinking about, because if we just leave if we leave women who are brandishing their hijabs in the street in Iran, if we leave them standing alone, then what are we doing? It's just, I mean, we need to learn the lessons of history. The failed revolution of Hungary in the 1950s will just be repeated again. We can't leave people standing alone. So we need to take action internationally, and we also need to take action in other ways as citizens. In European countries, we have the advantage of being members of the Council of Europe, so we can hold our governments before the European Court of Human Rights. Perhaps in other countries, we have to think of other things that we can do. We just can't leave people exposed and alone. This isn't something that affects women who are only talking about women's rights. It would be wrong to focus only on that. Unfortunately, for women, there are way more avenues to attack them. If we look at Khadija Ismailova in Azerbaijan, for example, she doesn't really report on women's rights. Her investigations are about governmental corruption and human rights abuses in general, yet she's targeted more than other male journalists because she's a woman. And there are way more avenues for the government of Azerbaijan to target her. The state is never going to be complicit. It's never going to use sexual slurs against a male journalist, but in Khadija's case, it released a surveillance video of her as a sexual slur against her. This will never happen in the case of a man. There are way more avenues for abuse in the case of women. From my own experience, I grew up, my mother spent 30 years reporting. I grew up thinking that experiencing these kinds of sexual slurs were normal for a woman journalist. I would just come home from school as a kid and find graffiti spray painted over the wall leading up to the house. I just thought that this was normal. It isn't, and we shouldn't accept this as a kind of occupational hazard. Yes, I mean, we can mock it, but unfortunately, this is the first step. This kind of abuse is the first step before physical violence, before murder. You can embrace it all you want, but I think you have to accept that it's just a precursor to physical violence. We should encourage people to step up and defend us. We should be receiving the legal help that we need to fight this kind of abuse. Thank you.
I'm going to do it.
Thank you, Matthew. So we have been talking about mockery, lawsuit. What can we use to combat violence against women journalists? I want to ask you, Nadine.
Oh, this one is not working. Is it? No. Okay. Take this one.
So before I talk about the ways that we can combat it, I just want to add a few comments from what the panel has said. And I think it is really important to echo what my colleagues here have said, that this isn't limited to women covering specific topics. So, you know, we've been doing work to support women journalists around the world for 30 years. This is an issue that affects all women journalists, whatever, you know, line of reporting that they are in. And to be honest, I think the root of the problem is the patriarchal structures in which our societies are based. Really, the biggest threat that women journalists come across doing their job is men. And it's not necessarily just men that they're encountering in the field, whether it's sources or, hostile actors in the field. It's also coming from inside their own newsrooms as well, and that's something that I think is important for us to understand. It can be coming from colleagues, it can be coming from bosses. We've been hearing this now through the Me Too movement, but this is rooted firmly within the structures of the industry, and not just the news industry. I saw last night a poll that the organization CARE did of 9,000 people around the world, which found that 1 in 4 men thought that it was always or sometimes acceptable for an employer to expect sex from an employee. So this is like what we're starting from. And the IWMF did a survey in 2014 with INSEE, the International News Safety Institute, that showed that 2/3 of women said that they had experienced some kind of abuse, whether it was physical or online abuse. And as we've heard already, those two things can blur quite easily back and forth. But I think particularly when we get into online abuse, what we see is that when it's directed at women, it's almost always violent, it's almost always sexualized. And what I haven't heard here today, because we're hearing from women who have spoken loud and who have stood up and said, no, I'm not going to be silenced. But what actually is happening to a lot of other women is that their voices are being silenced. And there's a calculation that they make when they receive those threats online. Well, do I want to report this story? Because maybe if I report this story, someone will come and attack my kid. Someone will come to my house and attack me. That is a real calculation that we hear about from our community. So that self-censorship really means that there are stories that are going untold. And so we thought it would be important to really focus on doing a study and doing some solid research into this issue. We're doing that in partnership with a group called Trollbusters, founded by Michelle Ferrier, who was herself really viciously trolled during her career as a journalist and has started this organization to try to combat online harassment. And so we have done a pilot survey, which is just about to be finished. Well, we're just closing the survey now, so the data analysis is underway. But one thing that I just want to point out is how hard it was to get newsrooms to agree to partner with us to distribute the survey to their staff. And we thought that was pretty interesting. In fact, we ended up, instead of being, helped with the process, ending up with HR representatives and legal representatives from those newsrooms with a lot of questions about what our survey was trying to get at. And I do think that at least in the US, we're seeing that there's a real defensive position on the part of newsrooms who, they don't want to put their necks out there and get called out for not doing the right thing. I had one senior manager write in an email to me that first he was concerned that his staff might be disturbed by the nature of the questions that we were asking, because we were asking about harassment, and then said that it might create the expectation of solutions if they presented the survey to the staff, asking them if they were having these problems. So that's, I think he's not the only person who's thinking that way right now. This really makes me want to know how many newsrooms and media managers are enforcing sort of a don't ask, don't tell policy, because they honestly have no idea how to deal with this problem. The solutions are not easy because this is such a widespread and pervasive issue. We do think, though, that at least having the baseline research to know the depth and breadth of the issues will give us some starting points and to really fully understand the impact of the attacks. If we can see that this is really a threat to the news industry as a whole, maybe we can get people to start taking this seriously at the top. But I'll just quickly go through so CPJ and the IWMF co-led a session at the Internet Freedom Forum last week in Spain. And there was a working group specifically on solutions and focused on online harassment. So I do have just a couple of points from that. And in addition to really understanding through research what's going on, another recommendation was of having third-party online threat assessments. So newsrooms need outside help to be able to really get at what is happening, to assess and document the abuse that's happening. Also, a real need for psychological support. This is something that we see in our work. We run an emergency fund. Many of our partners also have emergency assistance for journalists in distress. But the need for psychological support is a serious issue, and proactive psychological support. So along with this, things like helping to build resiliency in newsrooms. For journalists who, as we know, particularly women and minorities in newsrooms, will be facing this issue. So we need to be talking about it. We need to be helping people to know what to do when it happens to them and putting systems in place. One newsroom that has been really, I think, out front on this has been BuzzFeed, where they instill that culture of resiliency, of talking about, we know this is going to happen, this is what you can do, this is who you can talk to, we're going to figure out how to address this when it does happen. Then, of course, there's also naming and shaming the trolls and harassers and really bringing them to account through legal means, as you've mentioned. And also just sort of like really practical tools about what to do. So Michelle, for Trollbusters, developed, it's basically like a flow chart, but she's got these little cool cards as well. So it's like, what is happening right now? Okay, someone has posted a libelous comment, so what should I do? And then we've got a little flow chart of what you could do. And that might include having other people comment on your behalf, report offending tweets, stop looking, or go to card report. Let's see, we've got someone has posted an explicit threat, which you just received a death threat yesterday. So lock down your physical location, report to the police, talk to your employer. So basically just like real practical steps. Yeah, of course you can have it. This is also available on the Trollbusters website, and hopefully it's going to get translated into more languages. But we just need to be giving both journalists and managers in newsrooms the tools to be able to start having these conversations about solutions, because right now we're not even to the place of wanting to understand the problem.
Yeah. Thank you, Nadine.
Okay. I just want to add something to that, which is that for a journalist who is experiencing this kind of trolling, it really is designed to kind of bleed you dry. If you have a state working against you, there is no way that you are going to be able to keep up with reporting all these threats that you receive. It's just impossible. If you're up against a state with an unlimited budget to carry out these kinds of attacks, you're never going to win. So I think we have to think of ways of kind of being a little more aggressive than that. And I mean, even after the kind of barrage of trolling that my brothers and I, well, my family and in general have received after we started a campaign to take action after my mother was killed, even that is impossible for us to deal with, 3 people acting against all this. So, I mean, I think we have to start thinking of ways in which we can take action against the social networks that have these kind of failures in checks which enable this kind of behavior. Because we shouldn't be the ones that deal with this on a day-to-day basis. It should be the companies themselves that have checks in place to deal with it. We should not accept that this kind of trolling is an occupational hazard that as journalists or activists or whatever we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. It's just too tiring. It's designed to kind of weigh you down and dampen your spirit. And I have to say that most of the time it's successful. So we just can't keep up. We need other ways to deal with it. I don't know, taking legal action against social networks, for example. Lobbying politicians to take action against the networks themselves. Perhaps that will be more powerful in the long run. But reporting the threats as they come about is important, because we need that in order to build a case. So journalists and activists need to be encouraged to report threats, and they also need to have the facility to do it. And that helps us build a legal case, so it's also important.
Courtney, I think in CPJ you're working a lot on this issue.
Yes, so, is this on? Hello. Yes, at the Committee to Protect Journalists, we are working quite a bit with the companies. We are part of the Global Network Initiative, which provides a forum for conversing with the companies, but we're also a partner with Facebook's Journalist Safety Project, and we have regular consultations with Twitter's Trust and Safety Project. I think it's hugely challenging because the companies do want to do something. They say that they want to do something, but they're having trouble figuring out, A, the scope of the problem. And part of that goes to what Nadine highlighted and what Matthew just said about understanding the true scope and trends of the problem, because it varies by region. And one of the things that came out of the Internet Freedom Festival roundtable on this topic that we held last year is that there are some very good individual studies being done at certain country levels or certain case studies, but there's not a central repository. There's no one-stop shop where we can kind of see as a whole what are the full dynamics, because whatever solution these companies take to address a certain form of harassment or threats online is going to have repercussions around the world. And so they're trying to, find a balance there. I will say that they definitely need to do more. So some of the things that they have done is to take more opportunities for users to have power over kind of who is visible in their feeds, being able to mute or block people and whether or not that sends a signal to the person that has been muted or blocked, which can be a useful tool. But on the other hand, our research at CPJ shows that many of the journalists who are murdered or attacked or imprisoned receive threats first. So, it could be a double-edged sword to hide or block those threats because you want to know if you're receiving threats. The other thing is, a lot of these companies don't necessarily understand what constitutes a threat in certain different types of contexts. So for example, I have a dear friend in Pakistan who has done a lot of research into online harassment of Pakistani women journalists. And a threat there can be constituted by simply posting a photo of a woman in a certain context. Doesn't even have to be naked or without a hijab or anything like that. Just, certain types of, visibility of women can end up constituting a threat that might emanate from a family member or from, her social network. So, but they have trouble when they go to report that because it's not seen as violating a terms of service and therefore not subject to takedown. And then of course we have the other problem, which is the over takedown of material by the platforms when they're, say, countering violent extremism or combating fake news, and then end up taking down swaths of newsworthy journalistic content as part of that repercussion. So it's, it's very challenging, but for sure the companies are not doing enough because they are not sharing the data that the community, whether you're an NGO, an academic, or journalist, need to make educated decisions. So we don't have, any sort of independent ombuds person looking over the algorithms, how that is leading to certain decisions, what are the takedowns. We don't have any sort of independent audit ability over the type of, content or accounts that are being taken down. But at the same time, there are platforms, one of the ways that we often have talked in the press freedom community about combating, bad speech is with more speech. But what happens when you're in an environment where the speech is amplified through bots and through botnets, where it is unreasonable to expect that, any of the journalists up here can, for a state or a non-state botnet, can fight back against that. I don't know how to make a botnet. And it's very real. And I think there's another element which we haven't really spoken about yet, but which is critical because just prior to this panel chatting with somebody about also the personal responsibility of journalists needing to take the correct, digital safety precautions to make it just a little bit harder to attack them. So if I say dual factor authentication, can you just raise your hand if you're like, okay, yeah, I know that and I have that on my account? Okay, so when I talk to journalists and they don't know what that means, it's deeply concerning, but it's double concerning when it's a woman because you probably have photos on your phone or in your social media accounts that you don't want put out there. But we know that trolling and that targeted hacking is a very real threat for journalists around the world. From Africa to, just speaking with a journalist a few weeks ago from Honduras, where whether it's state or non-state actors trying to get that information about a source or trying to get that information that they can then hold against you. So you want to make sure that you are securing your social media accounts, that you're making sure that you've done an audit as to what sort of information is out there about you. And this idea, even if you do that, I just had an information audit done by our security specialist, and it came out really well. It was great. I still censored myself. A couple of weeks ago, we gave out the Press Suppressors Award. Please don't tweet this. But we gave out the Press Suppressors Award, and we had to write an op-ed to explain, because a lot of people who had a lot of opinions about it clearly did not read them, when we gave President Trump the honorable mention for the press suppressor. And I did not want to write the response. I didn't want to deal with the trolls that I knew would come. And it's sad to feel that censorship and know that I have a lot of the tools, but that's still not going to be enough. I think we have to look at solutions at all levels, from the individual, what does the journalist do, what do the platforms need to do, what do the legal system needs to provide, and of course what news media outlets need to do.
I think we need an American human rights court. Come on.
There is one. The Inter-American Court of Human Rights.
It doesn't work.
I forgot to mention that.
It doesn't
No,
work.
it
We need
doesn't.
another one.
You're right.
We need that one doesn't work. Doesn't, a lot of people here don't know about it. But I am particularly excited about this CSW and about this panel, because all's not lost. You're all taking action. This is why you are having this. This is why we're sitting up here. Right? We're all taking action. And I get a strong feeling that things are getting better. I'm with the International Association for Women in Radio and Television, and we are taking action. Each year we have a regional conference in a developing country around the world. And we give training, we facilitate training, safety training for journalists in those areas, in very hot zones. We have the specialists in the field in our organization. And for instance, Abir Sahadi, who is from Egypt, whom you may have met, used to be the head of the journalist syndicate in Egypt, come under a lot of threats too. And I think was jailed once and that sort of thing. ISIS broke her leg not too long ago. But that doesn't stop her, because she's going into Syria and she's training citizen journalists on the ground to report and take action. We never give up. With legs broken, fingers, hands broken, like my sister over here. And in this book here, which we launched last year in the Philippines, we have some precautions, preventions of how to report, what to look for, even what to wear, right? So it's a book that it's a guide, it's a lifeline. And we're talking about Michelle Farrier from Ohio University, or we're talking about CPJ, or we're talking, all the people that are sitting up here have some little things to do with this book, because they're all mentioned. It's very hard talking about this book because I'm talking about them because they're sitting beside me, right? So it's kind of very difficult. But I just want to highlight, so the threats are spoken about already, but I want to highlight, if they're threatening you with bodily harm, this is speaking to you guys out there, go to the police and document the harassment. Keep screenshots of the threatening, abusive messages. But what if it's your government that is the threat, right? Which is what my colleague from Malta, because I follow that story, right? Or for the sister from Egypt or from Iran. What is the people who are supposed to protect you and who are supposed to take care of you are the people that are threatening you. What do? You know, in the whole old, this trolling and stuff is not new. In the old telephone system, where you have the long black cord and what have you all remember that? We used to get threats on the telephone. And you call the telephone company, and the telephone company would put a trace on it. And the telephone company would later get the police involved. And somebody would get charged for doing this. So, what is this mystery of online harassment going for so long, and we haven't nipped it in the bud yet? You know, I was at the Society for Professional Journalists event last night on the Me Too, and there was a lawyer on the panel. And how many of us here are aligned with the legal system, you know, to really protect us and talk to us about what can we really do? I was in a country, Sierra Leone, during the height of the war, and we're talking, I'll go back to your first question about reporting on women's issues, which you touched on and so on. And it was International Women's Day coming up, and the theme for that year was female genital mutilation. And the Special Rapporteur for Violence on Women came to Sierra Leone, and we started talking about it on UN radio. I set up UN Peacekeeping Radio and ran it, right? And the Bundes Society, which is the secret society in Sierra Leone, and a lot of countries have that, were totally against what we were doing. And so they threatened me. But here's how they threatened me. They threatened Auntie Sheila. So Auntie Sheila is an endearing term to say Auntie Sheila, but they never said that Sheila Dallas, which is what I was using. They threatened Auntie Sheila. When they couldn't get anywhere with me, because I went online and on the air and addressed the situation, they decided then that they're going to burn down the UN radio, right? Now that never happened, because I don't know if I was scared, and maybe 5 years later I said, oh my God, I could have been. Every government, every prime minister, every president in that particular country has to be approved by the Bundes Society. Everyone. So anything that's done in that country, the president of the country at the time directed the Minister of Presidential Affairs to write to Kofi Annan to ask them to remove me from the country because I'm inciting violence in the country. Oh, after my program, I played Bob Marley, get up for your rights, and they never liked that at all. So that was what was happening. And why is it that we can't have laws why can't we advocate, and perhaps you're doing it, for laws for the social media platform as we do for others, like we did for the telephone company or others? We have to come together, all of us, and work towards the major powers that be, because we're here talking from, you know, our individual perspective, which is collective, because we are all here together. So this has a lot of what was spoken about. I'm not going to read anything, but it's great. It's a great book. I wish we had a projector, because there are journalists in this book that had to be dragged out of their country with 2 broken legs, for instance, because they couldn't leave, but never stopped reporting. And we have to keep on doing it. And why is it the burden of us? Where are the male journalists? They come under fire too, but we need them at our side, right? We need to work together on this, because we're all under the same umbrella of being journalists. Thank you.
To address something in particular, or just comment?
You were saying previously that you wanted to
Oh,
show
give
how
more
to,
examples?
how to combat. I want to know the solution.
The solution is to be that angry woman who says fuck and doesn't stop. And it sounds really simple, but it's not, because it is exhausting. But what it does is, I mean, like, for example, on any given day, so I said earlier that I was a contributing opinion writer for the New York Times, but I'm not a full-time employee of the New York Times. So I have no institutional backing by anyone. I don't work full-time for anyone, I work for myself. And basically that means that social media is my platform and social media is my institutional backing. So on any given day, when I'm on Twitter and someone tries to come on and silence me, I'm fully cognizant of the fact that I have thousands and thousands of followers around the world. And they are often very young women. And they're often very young women who are not in a position to say fuck off and to call Donald Trump a fascist fuck in the way that I can. And they're the same journalists or young women on Twitter who, had they been attacked in Cairo when my arms were broken and I was sexually assaulted and threatened with gang rape and blindfolded and interrogated and all that, they probably would have been disappeared, if not raped and murdered. So what I'm saying is I have a lot of privilege because people listen to me. It's taken a long time to get to here, but people listen to me. When I was detained in Egypt, I was lucky enough, after 3 years in 3 years, thank God it wasn't 3 years. After 3 hours in police custody at the Interior Ministry, an activist came in with a smartphone because I had lost my smartphone when the police beat me and broke my arms. So I asked the activist to get me on Twitter, and I sent out a tweet saying, beaten, arrested, Interior Ministry. And within 15 minutes, hashtag Free Mona was trending around the world. Al Jazeera and The Guardian reported on what happened to me, and the State Department tweeted back and said, we hear you and we're working to free you. So that is an incredible amount of privilege. I was sitting there with 2 broken arms. I was taken to the military and blindfolded and interrogated with 2 broken arms, but I was alive. And everybody knew that I was in detention and they were fighting to get me out. And eventually I was released, probably because the Egyptian military intelligence realized I was more trouble detained than free. And that always is the calculation. And that's why I'm saying the solution is for those of us who can say fuck, and for those of us who are angry, to say fuck and be angry, and say, like my sister at the end of the table, yes, that's exactly why I tell the Egyptian regime, I am a slut. Okay, now what? What else can you throw at me? And so when I'm on Twitter, and I will fight back, when a woman in New Jersey, who I had never met, wrote a tweet to me and called me an Islamic terror bitch, because in 2012, I spray painted over a racist ad in the New York subway, and I was arrested and jailed overnight. I was supposed to stand trial, but I refused to take a plea deal, and eventually the judge dropped the charges in the interest of justice. Now, I was able to do that again because I don't work for anyone, and because I believe in civil disobedience, and because I believe in fighting against racism and making racism unacceptable. This is why I remain an independent journalist, and I'm not a full-time employee of anyone, because I know that many journalists have to sign these, how I behave on social media, how I behave in the real world, because I'm representing my media, blah, blah, blah. I haven't signed anything like that. I represent myself. So again, when this woman wrote and called me an Islamic terror bitch, I can fight back against her, and when people say she's just a troll, ignore her, I don't ignore her. Because yes, while I recognize that bots are this incredibly sophisticated thing I can't take on individually, it's really important for young women to see us fight. Because when I was 19, when I was 21, I could not say fuck and be this angry. Had I been 19 or 21 and in Egyptian police custody with 2 broken arms, I don't know how I would have reacted. I am now 50 years old and I am shameless. So when I started a movement a few weeks ago on Twitter, because I am a Muslim woman, and I appreciate what Me Too has done, and this again is because of the freedom that I have as an independent journalist. Me Too was begun in 2007 by a black feminist activist called Tarana Burke. She started Me Too to show solidarity for survivors of sexual violence, and I salute her for that. But since the latest iteration of Me Too last year by famous Hollywood actresses, my fear is that it has become this thing about famous white actresses and powerful white producers. And I'm like, hello. What about the rest of us, right? So, at the beginning of February, and this is where the young women come in, yeah? At the beginning of February, I read that a Pakistani woman called Sabika Khan, who is 23 years old and is a Muslim sister to me, never met her, will probably never meet her. She posted on Facebook that she had been sexually harassed at Islam's holiest site, Mecca. And this reminded me of how when I was 15 in 1982, I was sexually assaulted twice, once by a Saudi policeman during the pilgrimage, during the Hajj, is one of the fifth pillar of Islam at Islam's holiest site. So I thought, are you fucking kidding me? This is still happening? So in solidarity with Sabika Khan, who is only 23 years old and who had to deactivate her Facebook account because she does not have the privilege that I have. When you have privilege, you are obliged to fight 10 times harder than those who don't. And she doesn't have that platform. So I wrote a thread, one of many threads. I've written before about my sexual assault in Hajj. I've spoken on Egyptian television in Arabic. I've written about it in my book. But I wrote this thread to support Sabika, and it went viral. And this movement that I began, #MosqueMeToo, has gone viral. And this #MosqueMeToo I created for Muslim women to talk about sexual assault during the Hajj, but also in sacred space. There's a similar movement called #ChurchToo by Christian women. So this is a way of recognizing that Me Too belongs to all of us. And this, since I began this movement, every day, I've got a list of them now. You just want attention. So I say, you know what? When I was younger, this attention thing used to bother me more than prostitute. Yeah, I don't care about being called a slut. I am a slut. I love sex, so what? But it used to bother me when I was younger, when they used to say, you're just an attention whore. You just want attention. Now, after this MosqueMeToo, I was like, you know what? I do want attention because I have important things to say, and my ideas are important, and I deserve attention, and I want your attention, and you will give me your attention. And then they say to me, look at you, you have red hair, and my picture on Twitter, I'm wearing a sleeveless dress. What kind of Muslim are you? I am a Muslim whether you like it or not. Look, you're so ugly, who would want to sexually assault you? Okay, I'm ugly, I don't care. Many people I've had sex with would disagree, but that's besides the point. Right? So this is why I'm talking about, and I fully agree with you, Masih. This is why those of us who are older, who have gone through this shit for years, slut, attention whore, I go, oh, another one. Why are you talking about sexual assault in Mecca? You're making Muslims look bad. I was like, dude, you're making Muslims look bad, first of all, by assaulting women, and second of all, by writing to shut me up. Why aren't you talking about sexual violence in New Zealand? It's like every single reason that they could fight you with just to shut you up. So for the younger women out there, show them how you don't shut up. I don't have the legal resources that have been discussed on the table. This is not an option for me. I'm an independent journalist. I work alone. I was attacked by a Saudi cyber army, sent by the Saudi authorities. Do you remember that picture of Trump and the Saudi king and my fascist president, Sisi, holding a globe? This is for this big center that is supposed to fight radicalization. That's a fucking cyber army bot center to come after people like me. So I was attacked by the cyber army. I am the army. You know Björk, the singer? I am that army. What's the song that she has? Sorry, Army of Me, thank you. I am the army of me. So to every woman out there who has a platform, who doesn't have these legal methods at your disposal, I don't. Use that platform, be the army of you, and show young women, dig that way for younger women. Because we were all there once. Say fuck really loudly for them.
Yay! You're a real badass.
So are you.
But I really want to say something. I want to admit something. Before coming here to be that loud and full of hope and saying that I'm not scared, you can attack me in any way. I am a whore, I am a prostitute, I'm ugly. Anything you say, it doesn't bother me. I cried just with that lady, I hugged her. Sometimes you need a hug. And then you feel empowered. But the thing is, when you need bigger, like legal help, as you mentioned, we want the support from United Nations. We need the sisterhood from Western feminists. We need the support from United Nations. We need the support from female politicians. You failed. And then again, you see that you're alone. You're your own army. How? You know, when I was attacked by my government on the TV, an Iranian state TV, the main news channel, as I told you, my family live in a small village. They don't know what Facebook is, they don't know what Instagram is, they don't know what Twitter is, they don't have anything. They just watch the TV. Iranian state TV said that Masih Alinejad was raped in London by 3 men. And they were not even ashamed to make my teenager son involved in my fake rape scene. My parents were listening to the news and they got panic attack. Plus, they were ashamed because they still think that if you're a woman and you're raped, it's your fault. So, for me, that time was horrible. I cried in my personal life. I cried with my son. But I had to be powerful. Please don't publish anywhere. I cried a lot. But I had to show them and mock them and tell them that you raped me in your mind, but I'm far away from you. And I can invite all women to join me. And I was expecting the international community to join me. Guess what happened? I asked all the female politicians. I sent a letter to them, to Federico Mogherini, to Catherine Ashton, to all the female politicians that I know that they go to Iran and visit my government. And I asked them, look, I am being called prostitute. And they raped me on the Iranian state TV. Why? Because I am a campaigner against compulsory hijab. I just have a simple demand. When you go to Iran, to my country, do not obey compulsory hijab without challenging it. I didn't even ask them to take off your headscarf and be a rebel like me. I just told them, just ask a simple question. They went to my country. They didn't dare to ask a simple question. They were there. The female politician from Netherlands, they were there. At the same day, there was a woman from my campaign, White Wednesday's campaign, who waved her white headscarf in public, Shaparat Shajarizadeh. She got arrested. At the same day that 3 female politicians, the feminists, were visiting my government. So the people of Iran putting themselves in danger. Yes, we need help, but we don't need you to come and save us. Right. We only need you to do not downplay our cause. Do not legitimize the laws when we put ourselves in danger and challenge the law. We don't want you to save us. We want to save you, to understand that when there is a discriminatory law, doesn't matter who is in power. Donald Trump, Islamic Republic of Iran, anyone. You have to dare to challenge it. So the judiciary, I made a case in our judiciary about the Iranian state TV. The United Nations invited the Iranian, the Minister of Justice to be in Human Rights Council to speak just last month. And that breaks my heart. You know, what kind of report you want me to? That is why I think that because of politics, because of all this mess and hypocrisy in politics, you have to stand up on your knees. You have to be your own army. You have to mock them. You have to allow and ask women to get together. Otherwise, no one are going to help you. Instead, they downplay you. I'm going to give one example and just, leave the panel. There was another time that the female politician went to my country. Those were the feminists from Sweden. Those feminists who mocked Donald Trump campaign. And by publishing a picture of all female in cabinet. And I said, wow, such a beautiful picture. And I admired them. Just 1 month later, those feminist ministers, they went to my country. And I was like, what? So first you publish a picture to to Donald Trump that men and women are equal. And second, you publish another picture of yourself to say the Islamic Republic of Iran, well, men are more equal than women. That's horrible. And that is called hypocrisy. And while we want to talk about the old Sharia laws, I invited all the Muslim community to join me. They're really scared of being labeled of Islamophobic. But the thing is, I am not against Islam, but all the Sharia laws are against me as a woman from the age of 7. And I was banned to write about them in Iran. I was being told, shh, during the war, it's not a good time to write about it. During the revolution, shh, it's not a good time to write about it. And then we had sanctions, shh, we were not able to write about the women's right in our media because of sanction. The other government take advantage. And now, shh, because Donald Trump is around, he might get advantage. I am a girl from the Middle East. I have the wounds and scars of war, revolution, sanction in my body. I carry all the wounds with me. You scared of Donald Trump? And you never join me? All the feminists here keep silent. Muslim community keeps silent because of what? We have womenophobia in Islamic Republic of Iran. If you are true feminists in the West, you have to get all together and join us because our sisters in Iran, they're putting themselves in danger. The journalists are in prison. They are not allowed to write about this issue, the red line, and we have to keep the sisterhood. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
On women journalists in Iran and the hypocrisy, the FIFA, the World Football League, recently adopted a new human rights charter, which is great. It's a big joint effort between many organizations. And what was it, 2 weeks ago now? President of FIFA went to Iran. For a game. I'm not a sports expert, so it's something to do with the game. And the women are not allowed to go into the stadiums, which was shocking to discover when I started getting involved in this type of advocacy. But then there were reports as it was happening that women journalists were being locked in a closet. So not only were women not allowed, and then the women journalists not being allowed to go in and being locked in a closet, and then you have FIFA's president there
watching the game. 13 women, including journalists, were in prison.
And on that day, maybe this isn't public knowledge, on that day, they sent to all of the partners the draft human rights statement from FIFA. And we're just like, this is too much. Are you kidding me? And this, we have to have solidarity at all levels and with men. If you are the president of a major sporting association, you have a huge opportunity. But I think that we as advocates also need to know about the tools that we have at our disposal, that the Olympic Committee has a human rights assessment policy now as part of it, the bidding process. So we can bring this in, we can bring about the treatment of women journalists, we can bring about the treatment, of course, more broadly of women. So I would just, as a small aside on Iran and the situation there, just was shocking.
I just want to say one thing. Is this on?
Yep.
Hello? Trump's people are around.
Trump is silencing you.
Yes. Yeah. I just want to say something, and you're going to find it really strange, and it's to my sisters up here and to the other journalists in the audience. My daughter taught me this. Someone pushed her on the subway train, and she said, "Excuse me," and another woman looked at her and said, "Bitch." And she turned around and she said, "Miss Bitch to you, please." Right? So slut put an angle to my name. Miss Slut, Miss Whore, Miss Bitch. I can deal with that. Right? Thank you.
And maybe before we finish, if we'd like to ask if some of you have some questions for our panelists.
One in the back.
Thank you all so much for this. It was amazing. My name is Anjali. I'm
representing Women Deliver, which is an advocacy organization for the health, rights, and well-being of girls and women worldwide. We recently started a advocacy program that's focused on elevating the voices of women in humanitarian settings, and we've heard a lot of interest, especially with youth that we work with in countries like Egypt and in Iran, that are very interested in sharing their perspectives and their stories. And that's something that we're really excited about, but we're also concerned about how we can do this and provide platforms in a way that still provides protection and acknowledges the unique sensitivities they might face. And so I'm wondering, from your perspective, what do you think we can do as an organization to still provide opportunities that these people rightfully deserve to share their stories and platforms, while still doing everything in our power?
It's working.
I think that, you know, when the internet was created and the way that we wanted it to be used was to be a new space, but we see that states are trying to exert sovereignty over the internet. And not only over their internet, but then for everyone's internet. We see this especially with the EU and its policies around hate speech, around the so-called right to be forgotten or delisted, with Canada's Supreme Court ruling related to takedown of certain copywritten content, etc. So I think we're very much right now in this battle over where those boundaries lie, who gets to control and have the policies, their policies online. But de facto, the largest, the largest social media companies are based in not just the United States, but based on the West Coast, run by, for almost all of them, by men. And we know that the vast majority of people working at those companies are also men. So that we see that in the type of policies that they're adopting. And I think that we're doing pretty well at the policy level, thinking through with them. I think what we need to do more is at the programming level. And this goes to the question about AI and VR. We need to work with programmers who are at the very beginning of conceptualizing technology and new services and how algorithms are going to work, so that they're considering the gendered dimensions of those technologies. They're considering the ability, what is it going to mean for visibility, for anonymity, for privacy, for freedom of expression, etc. Because when we're also only looking at the policy level, we're way down here. We're way down, Twitter, Facebook have been around for years. They've been used. It's hard to then put a policy on top because you have a certain technology that is designed to enable connectivity and visibility. So as we're thinking about AI, which stands for artificial intelligence, in case folks are not familiar with that, and VR is virtual reality, I think we really have to look at the very design of it. And I think right now there's this tendency to say, oh, well, we don't want human moderation of the news, we don't want human intervention, we want this to be, let's let an algorithm do it, it's less biased. Well, algorithms are based on inputs, and many of the inputs in our system are biased. They're based on white people, or on men, or on people who are privileged to have had their data collected in some way through a health system or through a online news site that you have to pay for, or whatever it is. So we have to interrogate the inputs, and then what are the outputs, and the social justice issues that are inherent in the design of algorithms, I think, is something we have to be very careful on, because much of the world that we see and the stories that we get exposure to are based on algorithms that make certain assumptions. Right now, much of our public sphere is based on the idea that we should get more content that we like, and more content that is like what we consumed before. We never had a debate about that. We might actually want a public sphere that is designed to build empathy. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. We need to interrogate that, because that has profound impact, going back to the topic of the panel, for women journalists, for the topics that are forbidden subjects or not forbidden subjects, to the visibility of women. And I did want to just address that idea, because you talked about privilege and having the voice, but I think that what Reporters Without Borders and Committee to Protect Journalists can do is to help provide some protection for those journalists who might not have the same voices. And so, it can be hard to report harassment, to report sexual violence. But I think there is a need to do that so that it even, it can become visible, that we can be your voices. When I got fired by my Saudi boss in the Emirates and kicked out of the country for an article I wrote, it was Reporters Without Borders who covered that story, and I was nobody. I don't know how they even found out about that story, but that offered a level of protection and visibility that I think it's important that even if you don't have that privilege, there are organizations who are devoted to, particularly to, those local journalists, rural journalists who are not part of that privileged class. So just do consider us your allies.
I kind of want to touch on the policy issue a little. There's something called media law, and at one point I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer, so I did 1 year of law school. The internet, the bots, should not be immune to these media laws. And there's this whole thing about net neutrality and that sort of thing. We don't want control over it, but at the same time, are trolls anonymous? There should be a way to get to those people that are destroying reputation of journalists online. And we should be able to have policies, I think. I don't know how, and maybe this is something for CPJ and RSF and so to look at. And those of us at IAWRT too, and maybe we need to come together in this because all our people are at risk here. It's a very serious problem, and it does need to be addressed, because even when we say here hypocrisy, I don't even think hypocrisy fits into anything here. It's beyond hypocrisy. So I think those of us here need to coin or find that new word to identify what we're talking about, because it's not hypocrisy. It's really beyond hypocrisy, what we're talking about, in situation in Malta, situation in Iran, in Egypt, or even here in the United States. In the United States, I'm not sure what's happening. Honest to God, I don't know what's happening in the United States. I wish somebody could tell me what's going on in the United States. You get my meaning? I'm really at a loss where this is concerned. So it's not only media law, because it's destroying lives. It's destroying. People can hack into a journalist, into your site, or our side, and put stuff out as if it's coming from us. Is this the botology or the whatever it is that they call it? And then how we make that comeback to make this not happen again. Michelle Ferrier said that there was some conversation with Facebook and Twitter and with social media platform to have a separate gateway for journalists, right? I don't know if that's the answer to the problems, because it will still be out there. So this is something that I think we need to think about, and we need to think policy, whether we like it or not, or whether we agree with it or not, but we need to look at this, how it will work, if it's gonna work against us, or it's gonna work for us, but we need something. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Someone asked me, the woman from Women Deliver? That's right, we'll just turn this on. Thanks, Courtney.
Someone asked me about Women Deliver, right? Where are you? Oh, hello, yes. One thing I would love to discuss with you, or anyone who trains young women, and the other women here as well, hello to both of you, and because it touches on the issue that we're supposed to be discussing, kind of like the overall issue, the forbidden topics, right? I would love for this forbidden word to just be banished. just like the whole goal of my book was I want to banish the words like virginity and hymens and all this bullshit that people use against women, right? Sheila told us at the beginning the subjects that she has found to be among the most forbidden, menstruation, all that, sex, obviously, always, always. Are there ways that you discuss with the young women that you train in Egypt and in Iran? And the only time that men understand forbidden is when they're forbidden by the state. So when Abdel Fattah al-Sisi committed this awful massacre in which they killed 1,000 Egyptians who were staging a sit-in in August of 2013, then the entire country was forbidden from going out after certain times. They imposed a curfew on us. Finally, men understood what forbidden means. So when the curfew was finally lifted, I asked my Twitter followers in Egypt, so these men who are now celebrating the end of the curfew, do you now understand how your sisters feel who have a curfew imposed by their family every day? Of course, I was told, no, that's different. How is it different? So I would love to discuss this with young women. How is it different? Because for me, forbidden comes from what I call the trifecta of misogyny. Because if the state oppresses us all as men and women, the state and the street and the home together oppress girls and women. And that's where the forbidden comes in. So please give exercises to the young women that you work with. Imagine a world in which nothing is forbidden. That's the revolution.
So I would like to thank you all, and especially the panelists, and because the next side event is going to start right now, but really thank you to all. If you want to have some reports of the last report of Reporters Without Borders, you can take it here, and I wish you
and buttons.
Yeah, and buttons. A good evening.